earlier in the show, we did have a chance to catch up with Albert Breer because we were having a conversation about the rumors of Dalvin Cook and the Patriots having interest in Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Hopkins. And a lot of this was on the heels of the fact that there's been this little back and forth going on between Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick, where Belichick at the end of the season mentioned, where they're at from a spending standpoint, that they're one of the bottom tier teams in the league as far as spending goes the last 3 years. Interesting that he, chose the last 3 years since Tom Brady left to point that out and kind of do the math on that. And then Robert Kraft recently, via Greg Bedard, who covers the Patriots, has been covering sports there in Boston for a long time, sort of shot that down and said, that'll never be the issue. Like, spending will never be the issue. If it ever gets to that point, I'll just sell the team. So Albert Breer has covered the Patriots for a long time as well, too. He lives in the area. So we asked him whether or not he believes that there's the potential of not only some bad blood residing in New England since the departure of Tom Brady, one that Belichick was in on and maybe Bob Kraft was not in on, but also LaVar posed the question, is there the possibility that at some point very soon Bill Belichick could be fired?
I don't think we would ever hear that Bill Belichick was fired. I don't think Robert Kraft has it in him to do what Jerry Jones did to Jimmy Johnson in 1994. I think, Robert Kraft is going to want any separation with Bill to be amicable. And you can see it in the way that Kraft handled the breakup with Brady. Yeah. He was so concerned over how that looked, and he wanted to make sure that it didn't look like they were kicking Tom out the door. I think in the case of Belichick, my guess would be if he did feel it was time to move on, he would probably exhaust every avenue to try to make the split look amicable. And there's a chance, in a situation like that, that Bill would say no and say, just fire me if you're going to fire me. But it's hard for me to envision a scenario where Kraft would just outright fire. By the way, guys, that I do think that he has his next guy lined up in Gerard Mayo.
So that was Albert Breer joining us from last hour, talking about the weird dynamic that is now residing in New England between Bob Kraft and Bill Belichick. It's weird, man.
I just don't understand why you could be immune to being on the hot seat. You can win as many championships as you want, but if you've lost the ability to win, or maybe you're not lost the ability to win, but you're struggling to win, I don't understand. I guess I understand you're not going to judge all coaches equally just based upon, all right, what are you going to that's going to be better than what you already have? I get that, and it's hard to make sense of. We can go in a different direction and bring in somebody that ultimately you believe is going to do a better job than the current coach that you have. But I still think that there's something to be said about a coach that has had so much success that they're bulletproof. I mean, I don't know how healthy is that for an organization? Because you could be being held hostage. I've seen that happen before, where coaches have had so much influence that they weren't able to be removed, and it's possible that they did more damage than they did good. So I'm just curious. At what point do you sit there and you say Bill Belichick is doing more damage being the head coach than he is good? I mean, you got to start to believe that conversation has had to have come up if you're a Boston fan.
Yeah, I'm not a child of divorce, but I've heard this from people who are, that sometimes there's the potential that maybe the child blames one parent or another for chasing the other one off. And I just wonder if Robert Kraft looks at Belichick and, again, just says, you chased him off. I swear to God, I wonder if he looks at it and says, I trusted you. I could understand we go through a couple of tough seasons. I get all that. But I trusted you and your evaluation of where the best player in the history of the franchise and potentially in the entire sport was at in his career. I trusted you. And by trusting you, all that we've gotten is a playoff appearance in which we got blowtorched by Buffalo, and then missing the playoffs again, and then a sub 500 year after that. And all we got out of Tom Brady was a Super Bowl, a near MVP season, and another playoff appearance. Like, it just, like, that feels like not only, should maybe you not have immunity from losing seasons, but also if your inability to recognize what you had in a quarterback at that time has faltered, maybe that's where this is also a problem, which goes to the point of this year potentially could be a make or break year when it comes to what happens with Belichick and what happens with the Patriots, because there's a lot on the line.
Immunity from a losing season. It's a dope line.
There's a lot of people who have it, though.
I mean, Bill Belichick is one. I mean, make no mistake about it.
Right.
He's one.
Yeah. So if Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins are infused into that roster, I think that's a significant upgrade. But let me pose a what-if scenario to you. If they finish last in their division this year, which they are projected to do, by virtually anybody who looks at Buffalo, Miami, the Jets, and what they've done. If the Patriots finish last in their division and they're a non-playoff team, and say they're 6-11 or 7-10, what do you think the conversation is after the season?
The same one we're having this year,
but more heated.
I don't know. It just doesn't sound like Bill Belichick can be in that type of situation. I would have thought he would have been in that type of situation now. Why wait another year?
Right.
You've seen what you need to see where they're trending. It doesn't seem like they're trending up.
Yeah.
So that's a conversation that could have been had last year, and the fact that it wasn't had last year with more intensity than what it did, it just says that there's not. I mean, we stated it clearly. He's not a fireable guy. He's not. What'd you say? Immunity of what? Of what? What'd you say?
Immunity from a losing season.
Immunity from a losing season.
It's also
immunity.
And the fact that, as Albert pointed out, Gerard Mayo is kind of waiting to take over. Like, that's sort of the plan. I mean, that was the same with McDaniels. The thought was that Josh McDaniels was going to be the heir apparent to take over there, and then he went on and took over for the Raiders. But the fact that Gerard Mayo is also there, maybe it does feel like they've got themselves a plan in place for when it's time to move on and go in a different direction. But it's interesting to watch what's happened to them, what's happened to Brady, and again, Tom Brady will be back and celebrated at Foxborough this upcoming season. So we get to pay attention to that and look forward to all that fun stuff.